You are now tuned in to Go Time Dolphins with Charlie Touche and Kadeem Simmons, the Miami Dolphins podcast that's for the fans and by the fans.
Gotta make them lose their mind when it's your time. And it's showtime. Going all out when it's go time. I ain't wasting no time. Gotta make them lose their mind when it's showtime. Cause it's your time. Lay it on the line when it's go time. Don't waste no time.
People. Preseason is here. The Miami Dolphins are playing actual football against an actual opponent, not just playing amongst themselves. Phrasing. Yeah, as you can see, just me, Kadeem Simmons, no Charlie Touche, no 5-yard lead, no guest. Thought it's probably best to just, get something out there. At the time of recording, the Dolphins are having their one and only joint practice against the Chicago Bears, the opponent, on Sunday's game. I say that because I think that game, that joint practice, is when we'll see the starters, and you will not see them on Sunday in the actual preseason fixture. There's a whole host of reasons. I don't think injuries is one of them. Obviously, on Thursday night, we've seen, Anthony Richardson just fail to pick up a blitz, just like a broken or dislocated finger when he's throwing hands. That's probably going to rule him out for a few weeks. And we'll get to what that will mean, once we get more news, and probably myself and Charlie will discuss that next week. But yeah, I think the joint practices will allow the Dolphins to get themselves into situations where they can really test the starters. Preseason doesn't really allow that, again, for multiple reasons. You could stall out on a 0-3 drive. You can throw an interception. You might not get to the red zone. You might not be able to do a few things that you really want to try and key in or key on. No, key was correct. Against an actual opposition. So I think the joint practice will allow Tua, Waddle, and a whole bunch of other starters to, on both offense and defense, obviously, to test themselves against actual NFL opposition. And we'll see this preseason game at least be an opportunity for the second string, the third string, the guys on the bubble to really make a name for themselves. What is interesting about that is the secondary. So the Dolphins aren't entirely blessed to have a star-studded starting secondary. That is a lot of S. So yeah, you probably won't see a Jack Jones, a Storm Duck, a Kendall Sheffield, a Mike Hilton, a Minka Fitzpatrick, but you probably will see some of the rookies, Jason Marshall, and kind of see what they can offer and what they can bring. It's a shame because I do think, not so much a Storm Duck, but like a Mike Hilton and Jack Jones could really benefit from testing themselves in this system against, actual opposition, but they will get those reps, those key situations during the joint practice against the Chicago Bears. I also say one person who I think will be not a massive miss per se, but I would have loved to have seen Andrew Meyer, the center we drafted or picked up after the draft last year. Injury, keeping him out for a few weeks, but Teron Armstead on his podcast earlier this week basically said, he's an NFL starter for the next 10 years. He's someone I thought might get a look in last year. I believe he made the roster more often than not in terms of he wasn't on the practice squad. He dressed for a lot of games last year. If off the top of my head, I need to double check that. But I would have loved to have seen him, test himself again, not just in the preseason games, but against the Chicago Bears. I think the succession plan of Andrew Brewer to Andrew Myers could have been, or is one the Dolphins are hoping to enact. And I think Teron Armstead saying, he's a starting NFL center for the next 10 years, probably mean. And listen, I'm sure that the league knows what Maya can do from a, technique standpoint, all that kind of stuff. But Teron Armstead saying that might have a few NFL, GMs and head coaches kind of like stop and go, okay, if he's on a practice squad, we might pick him up. That's just my opinion. Who knows? So yeah, he will be a big miss, in my opinion. He was someone who I would have loved to have seen participate in the joint practices in the preseason. One person who needs, and again, in my opinion, to be fair, might be too little, too late, but Cam Smith. If there's ever a time to show that this second round pick wasn't a major bust, it is now. I personally think that he will not make the Dolphins' final 53-man roster, which is insane given the injury to the secondary. But yeah, I do believe that Cam Smith needs the biggest preseason to give himself a fighting chance of making the roster. Again, when Charlie's back, we'll talk about Cam Smith and the disappointment that he has been so far. But yeah, I'm looking forward to preseason. I'm looking forward to, again, the Dolphins have done a great job over the last few years of finding undrafted free agent gems, from Preston Williams, Dorm Duck, Kader Kohu. Someone in the comments probably be like, one of those two guys was drafted. I'm pretty sure they weren't. But yeah, who's going to be the next? Who's going to be the next guy? Who's going to be the guy in the secondary that's going to really step up and go, nah, the fans are worried about the strength of this unit. They don't need to worry because of someone's going to step up, someone's going to make a name for themselves. It could just be Ethan Bonner. Ethan Bonner sounds like he's having a good camp. These things make a difference. But yeah, it's going to be interesting. Like I said at the start, I don't think we will see any starters on the offense. I can't imagine we see any starters on the defense. As I mentioned before, the joint practice will probably allow for, Mike McDaniel, Anthony Weaver to get and do what they need to do. And, that would be the tape that they look at over the next week to try and work out where people stand in preseason, depth chart, all that kind of stuff. The offensive line is going to be interesting as well. We know that Liam Eichenberg is injured. We know that, there's places up for grabs, especially, backup tackle, backup center as well. It'd be very interesting to see if someone can make a name for themselves, which actually brings me very nicely to the backup quarterback battle. So Zach Wilson, v. Quinn Ewers. For all intents and purposes, it sounds like Quinn Ewers is doing a great job in, training camp so far. And again, I personally believe we'll see mostly. How does this work out? I think we'll see mostly Zach Wilson. I think Zach Wilson will start the game against the Bears, see what he can do with, I guess maybe Ollie Gordon, or yeah, it won't be Achan. So probably Ollie Gordon getting a lot of the carries. And then wide receivers, the Washingtons might feature. Is it Cornell Armstrong? I think he's the wide receiver, not the DB. But again, can any of these wide receivers in what looks and sounds like a very, very strong unit make a name for themselves? But I think we'll see mostly Zach Wilson tonight. I say tonight, Sunday, when the game is played. A bit of Quinn Ewers, but I personally believe it will be Zach Wilson the majority in game one, Tua for a few drives game two, and then a bit of Zach Wilson and a bit of Quinn Ewers. And then, yeah, game three, essentially Quinn Ewers mostly. And again, Quinn Ewers against NFL opposition, be it, backups, roster bubble players, will be interesting to see. We obviously remember the dream that Skylar Thompson, and who was the wide receiver that we had? Oh, this is going to bug me. Let me know in the comments. This is why I enjoy recording with someone. But yeah, the wide receiver who had himself quite a connection with Skylar Thompson, their rookie year. We all know how that situation ended up. But yeah, Quinn Ewers, very interested to see how he gets on against the Chicago Bears. And I guess the Chicago Bears, I'm not worried too much about the results. I can't imagine we see much, if any, of Caleb Williams. Again, if Caleb Williams is, embarrassing our defense in joint practice, then the Dolphins will have serious issues going forward. But I can't imagine Dolphins will have too many issues in joint practice against the Chicago Bears. Sunday could be a whole different story. Preseason really doesn't mean anything for me anyway. I'm not too worried about results. It's more about players making a name for themselves. I guess you kind of want to see some better clock management, better penalty handling. What's the best? Essentially, are we seeing in preseason Mike McDaniel make the steps and jumps we need and have needed for the last few years? But yeah, maybe we see Mike McDaniel handle play calling duties in preseason, similar to what Andy Reid does with the Kansas City Chiefs. I highly doubt it, but who knows? But yeah, like I said, just me today. A few of my thoughts on the preseason game and during practice. I'll basically give my score prediction in bonus time. So thanks for joining me so far. Stay with me through bonus time, through the outro essentially. And I guess I'll see you in 30 seconds.
Gotta make them lose their mind when it's your time. And it's showtime. Going all out when it's go time. I ain't wasting no time. Gotta make them lose their mind when it's showtime. Cause it's your time. Lay it on the line when it's go time. Don't waste no time. Gotta make them lose their mind when it's your time. And it's showtime. Going all out when it's go time. I ain't wasting no time.
So yeah, my score prediction. If you're new here, obviously make sure you hit the subscribe button, leave a comment, like all the good stuff. During the season, you'll see, on preview games especially, just for people who are new here or are new here but forgot how these things work. We'll have no huddle. We'll go through fantasy implications. We'll go through the injury report for both teams and then score predictions. There's no fantasy. And the injury report, again, isn't quite out yet. I haven't heard what Mike McDaniel had to say before the game. I'm recording while they're doing joint practice. Hopefully no one gets injured. But score prediction for a preseason game doesn't really matter. I'll go with a Dolphins win. I'll go with 2 turnovers from the Dolphins defense, and I'll go with at least 3 touchdowns thrown by the Dolphins offense, and the Dolphins win. The other interesting thing will be, I guess, who's going to be the starting punter. I believe the Dolphins have 2 at the moment. So again, another opportunity for the Dolphins to see how things go on special teams. But yeah, really short one for me today. Don't need to see too much from me. I guess, like I said, I personally believe we won't see anything. I've done this, like you can see my hands tuck my chest. I don't believe we'll see any Dolphin starters play on Sunday against Chicago Bears. Starters will get their reps in the one joint practice. We know that Tua wants to be playing preseason to, get sharp and all that kind of stuff. Like I said, I don't believe any of the injuries across the preseason game so far will factor into Mike McDaniel's decision to not play starters. But yeah, I can imagine a situation where joint practices, especially against the Chicago Bears, will be, where the starters play. And against the Bears, we will see backups, roster bubble guys. Like I said, an absolute shame. In my opinion, we won't see any Andrew Meyer, but it is what it is. Guys, thank you so much for joining me today. Normal service should resume for the Chicago Bears review, which should be out, I guess, Monday. I'll have Charlie back, but some good things coming over to Go Time Dolphins. We always say that because there's always good things coming. And until the next one, I and we shall see you soon. Peace.